Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Today, we read 3 stories from r/creepyencounters. Let's begin. Our first story is from p-sylencing. I think other people have access to our apartment that shouldn't. I never thought about posting this here, but after seeing some of the other posts recently, I felt like I should. My husband and I live in an apartment building. There are 4 apartments, 2 on the first floor and 2 on the top. All 4 are identical 3-bedroom layouts. We live on the top floor. Shortly after we moved in, one of our downstairs neighbors told us all that our keys are identical, so we can open up each other's doors. He said that when he learned this, he immediately got his locks changed. I was curious about this, because I'm a very paranoid person. We are good friends with our neighbors across from us on the same floor, so I tried my mailbox key in theirs. It worked. Not only that, but I could open up every one of the building's mailboxes. I then texted the neighbor and told her that I did this, and explained that the keys are identical. With her permission, I tried to open the door to her apartment with our key. It worked. I don't much like the downstairs neighbors, so I don't feel comfortable asking them if I can test their locks, but nonetheless, this was an unsettling find. On top of this, another downstairs neighbor, not the one that told me about the keys, the one across from him, is dating the building's maintenance guy. The maintenance guy obviously has the keys to all of the units. That's always unsettled me, because the occupants of that unit aren't the best people, and I've worried before that they might steal his keys. Or, honestly, if they asked, I don't doubt he'd give them the keys voluntarily. So anywho, with all of that in mind, here are some bizarre occurrences. The first one occurred about 6 months ago. My husband and I came home, and I walked into our bathroom. A ton of random stuff had been thrown off of the counter and onto the floor. This was weird because we don't have any pets. Neither of us did it. And it was only about half of what was on the counter that ended up on the ground. We swept our place and didn't find anyone, but I really didn't like it. The weirdest occurrence was about 4 months ago. My husband wasn't home, and I was in one of our bathrooms, which is on the far end of the unit from the door. I was expecting my husband to be home, and I heard the door open and close. I was in the bathroom for about 20 minutes doing my hair, and when I came out to see my husband, nobody was home. I was totally alone. My husband came home about 10 minutes later. I've been wondering since that incident if someone came in thinking that we were both gone. We share a car, and my husband had it, but saw the light under the door to the bathroom, and realized I was home and left. Yes, we've added an additional lock. Super creepy, right? Our second story is from KCparanormal. Mountain man sicked his dog on us in a blizzard. Backstory. This happened on my 19th birthday. I was living in Vermont, on a mountain away from home as a working student on a massive horse breeding farm. It was February, and obviously very snowy. We left for a multiple-day, out-of-state event in the evening to head back to the farm. I was driving my own car, a sporty old coupe, but front-wheel drive, with the new sales rep as a passenger. We're both women, and she was maybe 25 or so. The other working students were riding with the boss in the big rig, or with another who was driving her van. We convoyed with everyone else until about 12 a.m., when the trailer had an issue near Albany, New York. We had encountered snowfall all night, as there was a blizzard going on, but it was now getting bad around this time and area. The boss told me and the sales rep to keep going, so that we could make it back for morning chores in case they didn't. The barn manager was the only one who stayed back at the farm. We knew she slept like a sloth on tranks, and was expecting to have a day off, since we would all be back. Everyone else stayed so that there was enough hands to unload the horses if needed. The rest of the trip. Around 3 a.m., me and the sales rep reached the back roads to get up to the mountain to the farm. At this point, there was about 4 inches of snow on the roads. We kept having trouble getting up hills and tried every route we could think of. I didn't have a lot of gas left, and we were tired and getting nervous. The sales rep suggested another route she thought she knew, and I figured why not. I had never been this way, because I would simply drive the same way down the mountain to go to town on my day off. We got pretty far with this other route, but the snow was still falling, and I was having trouble with the hill again. At this time, we saw a house, extremely far and few between in that area, and I was able to pull into the bottom of the driveway. It looked like they had a truck up there, and there was a light in the window, so we decided that we should knock and ask them if they could drive us up to the farm. I know this sounds totally nuts, but everyone knew of the farm, and the boss had been there forever, and seemed to know everyone personally. Plus, we were together, so I figured it would be okay, and it would hopefully be a nice man who knew our boss. Of course, this is where things get weird. We're walking up and suddenly a dog starts viciously barking and lunging at the end of a very short heavy chain which is attached to a tree in a blizzard at night. This startled the crap out of us, and obviously we didn't like it on an ethical level. But the house was only a few yards away now, so we sprinted to it. We got to the door, and right as the sales rep is about to knock, I grab her hand. Because now that we're close up and not chatting or dealing with the scary dog, I noticed that the door is only a piece of plywood on hinges, and the little house is a crappy-looking shack. Basically, like they had built their own permanent shelter, but didn't have the skills to do it nicely. Meanwhile, the dog is still barking and lunging on the chain. She sees what I see, and we decide to go back, and then ended up running to the car, because it was one of those redneck properties that you imagine wouldn't appreciate visitors. It snapped us back to our senses, that there could be multiple men inside or someone dangerous, especially considering the dog situation. I managed to drive up that hill that was giving us trouble before. And as we get going, we see a herd of mini horses running across the road in a line and jump into the woods. We had a good idea, maybe not the best considering what just happened, that if we found a farm along this road, it could be their horses, and they'd be grateful for our help in catching them and drive us home. Not long after, we came to a well-kept little farm, and the road was a dead end right after. The sun was starting to come up now. We leave the car on the road and walk up to the house, which isn't set far back at all. We knock endlessly and no one answers. Just as we started to walk back to the car, the sales rep spots something running up the road. It's the dog. We run like hell to the car and got there just in time for the dog to jump around outside of my car, biting the mirrors and whatever it could get a hold of like it was deranged. To be clear, I love dogs. We lived with the manager's pit bull, and I've now been working with dogs in many settings including shelters for years. I've had bad bites, and have worked with court-declared dangerous dogs. I've never seen one in person as aggressive as this before or after. We got the heck out of there, and I drove as fast and safely as I could away from the dog. We didn't see anything else on the road, or glancing down the driveway of that shack driving past it again. When we got stuck on the next hill, we simply parked at the end of another driveway and sat there. My gas light was on, and we were using the battery to run the heat. We were completely delirious, just laughing and crying while keeping a lookout for that dog, or a crazy man. Eventually, around 6:30 a.m., we saw a plow truck coming through and got out to flag it down. He knew our boss and gladly plowed our way home. I really do believe that someone sicked the dog on us because the chain was so heavy and we were almost a mile up the road when it got to us. We had also been watching the mirrors as we left the shack because we were so freaked out already. Whether they thought that we were going to break in or were just mad that someone came up to their driveway, I'll never know. I'm just glad that it was an almost creepy encounter with whoever lived in that mountain shack. Our last story is from p-sylencing. Nightmare fuel. Back in 2015, I was dog sitting for a family that my parents knew really well. They lived in a wealthier neighborhood and had 3 dogs. It was a very safe area, so my parents were okay with me doing it, even though I was still in high school. They had contractors working on their deck outside. I was notified of this by the homeowners, and they told me the guys would never have a reason to come inside the house, so I shouldn't have any concerns about interacting with them. One evening, I returned to the house after school and cheer practice. I walked through the threshold and down the hallway into the kitchen, in the back of the house, to let the dogs outside. There was literally a man just standing there, staring at me. None of the lights were on. I almost had a heart attack. I flipped the light switch on, and it looked like it was one of the contractors. He was smiling like a psychopath. He held up the spare key from outside and said, "You're staying here all alone, right? You should have hidden this key better." The key was hidden in the front of the house under a rock. Not only that, it was a very hidden rock. The contractors were working in the back of the house. There was absolutely no reason for them to have found that key, which tells me that this guy must have been purposefully looking for it. I told him to leave immediately or I'd call the cops. As he walked by me, he whispered to me, "The cops wouldn't do much. It wasn't breaking and entering." Then he handed me back the spare key. I immediately called the homeowners. They were obviously freaked out on my behalf. They called the contracting company to fire them and wanted to know the name of the exact guy who had entered their home. Turns out, this dude wasn't actually part of the contracting company. The whole team that was at the house that day was at the moment with their boss at dinner. So, some random dude was watching the house, found out I was there alone, pretended to be one of the contractors, and broke in just to mess with me. Thank God my father came and spent the night with me, and thank God this creep didn't do anything worse. To this day, we still have no idea who he was or how he found the key. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider commenting or sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. The stories in this video were read and slightly altered with the author's permissions. Thank you again for listening, and be sure to check out the original Reddit posts. Don't let the shadows get too close.